Hey, what's up, horror fans? I am a nerd of my word, and I promised that I would review every Friday the 13th film every Friday the 13th. Last year, I had a very exhausting Friday the 13th season because we had two Friday the 13ths back to back. And we are continuing this new tradition on June 13th, which happens to be Jason Voorhees' birthday. So let's talk about Friday the 13th Part 3, or as I like to call it, the second movie in the Jason trilogy. Just like the Rocky franchise, this movie opens up with a recap of the previous film, Friday the 13th Part 2. Our final girl, Ginny, runs through the woods and finds herself at Jason's shack. Us old school Nintendo NES fans were kind of disappointed that that scene was not included in the final film. Ginny does her best impression of Mrs. Voorhees and it really has Jason fooled up until this part.
Because little girls are the devil!
Paul shows up to the rescue and asks Jason if he likes mayo with his knuckle sandwich. Ginny ends up finishing Jason off with a judo chop to the shoulder. Once Ginny and Paul take off Jason's sack mask, they realize he has a lot of split ends, so they decide to take off. We then get a shot of Jason removing the machete from his shoulder and crawling his way out of frame. Originally, when the cameraman was focusing on the severed head of Mrs. Voorhees, oh wait, look over here, you can see the rotting corpse of Alice, the final girl from Part 1. Oh yeah, back to what I was talking about. So originally, when the cameraman was focusing on the severed head of Mrs. Voorhees, her eyes were actually supposed to open up, but the filmmakers decided that that was just too stupid. But I was like, hey, let's get creative and let's see if we could put that back in. Nah, it needs more disco. Friday the 13th Part 3 finally opens up at the town market.
God damn it, Harold! I spent all day yesterday washing your clothes. Look what...
Oh yeah, did I mention Friday the 13th Part 3 was shot in 3D? Yeah, expect a lot of randomness and things being tossed at the camera for no apparent reason. Well, we've met Harold, but now meet his wife, who just happens to be hanging out watching Friday the 13th Part 2 on TV. Well, I do see Amy Steele, so it could either be Friday the 13th Part 2 or April Fool's Day. Being withheld until notification of next... Wait, who the hell is that? The last time we saw Jason Voorhees was only a few hours ago, and he had like long hair and a beard. He looked like a cross between Casey Jones and the melting dude from RoboCop. Not only is this Jason Voorhees a hairless, he happens to be a foot or two taller and he put on a lot of muscle. He must have hit the gym before he got to Harold's Market. Now, before we go on, there is a theory or a possible explanation for Jason's sudden change in look. It's not my own personal theory, but it's something that I have heard, and if you kind of buy into it, it kind of works and kind of makes sense. So if you go in with the theory that the end of Friday the 13th Part 2, that final jump scare, was actually a dream sequence kind of similar to the dream sequence that was supposed to be the ending of Friday the 13th Part 1. And there is kind of a big hint that the end of Friday the 13th Part 2 is a dream sequence. That's right, Muffin. And if you remember in Friday the 13th Part 2, Muffin got lost in the woods, but she happened to stumble across Jason. And if you remember what followed up after that scene, let's just say if Muffin was John Wick's dog, we'd have a different ending altogether. So Muffin showing up at the end of Friday the 13th Part 2 is either her ghost, or that's just an entire dream sequence altogether. So with that theory in mind, you could say at the end of Friday the 13th Part 2, and Ginny takes off the sack mask, she sees a bald Jason who is heavily disfigured. And once her and Paul leave Jason's love shack, Jason crawls away and leaves that entire camp altogether and makes his way to Harold's Market. Therefore, the entire dream sequence never took place at all. And who knows, maybe Paul is the one that got the police department to come to Camp Crystal Lake, and that's why he's not shown on screen. I don't know, like I said, that theory works if you buy into it, and it kind of does help with some of the continuity issues. What's pretty cool about this scene is we actually get to see Jason do a costume change. Maybe he didn't want to match the description that Ginny gave to the police. Maybe he wanted a change of clothes, because you do remember in Friday the 13th Part 2, he did have two different outfits. It's pretty cool that human living Jason is conscious about his wardrobe. What I really like about the scene is how Jason is stalking Harold, but what I find really funny is if Jason wasn't going to kill Harold, either Harold's cholesterol or his wife was going to kill him. I don't know what I find more disturbing, Harold opening up the food and eating it and putting it back on the shelf, or the fact that I recognize the bag of Mother's chocolate chip cookies off to the left of the screen. Oh my god. Ugh, it just breaks my heart. Rest in peace, Mother's chocolate chip cookies. Harold is not only scared of his wife, but he's also scared of snakes that are dangling on wire. After being scared to death twice in a row, Harold just has to...
I'm gonna take a shit.
I don't know what it is about this franchise and people dropping a deuce and not wiping. Shoot, even Jason is disgusted about it and decides to take Harold out. Harold's wife figures out that it's way too quiet over there, so she decides to go over there and start yelling at him. I don't know what Harold's wife did to piss Jason off, but he's like, screw it, I'll kill her with her own sewing needle at least. 3D, people. 3D. Well, I hope you didn't think that was the main cast, so let's meet our group of young adults. Ah, good old Shelly. Cod's playing as the killer from Sledgehammer.
Hi, Mrs. Sanchez. I'm Chris. We've come to pick up Vera.
She is not going.
I know this experience to be true, but Hispanic mothers really do know best. We actually happen to have an interesting group here. We have Chris Higgins, our hostess with a pass. We have our newly expecting couple. We have Vera, and we also have goofball Shelly.
Hey, the van's on fire!
But yeah, we have Crystal Lake's very own Cheech and Chong. As they are making their way to their destination, we see the market where Harold and his wife were killed. Then we get to meet Merlin. After hanging out with this dude, it kind of makes you wish that Crazy Ralph was still around. What a shame to get rid of him so soon in the franchise.
I have warned thee.
3D, am I right? During the first moments of meeting Chris Higgins, there are little hints that maybe something traumatic happened to her the summer before, and that this getaway trip with her friends might be the medicine that she needs to forget about it. Finally reached their location of Higgins Haven. Foreshadowing. Yeah, in the 80s we were kind of told to walk it off because really no one cared about post-traumatic experiences. I really like that Nick is into Chris, but at the same time he likes rubbing in her face that, hey, I turned out an opportunity to be with Mary Jo Conrad, who apparently is a for sure thing. And even Chris is like, yeah, you're an idiot. It's almost like those rare occasions in a horror movie where like being a hoe could have saved your life. Classic Shelley. Alright, with that, let's take a quick commercial break.
Join Jason in the woods on his day, if you dare. Friday the 13th, Part 3 in Super 3D. Rated R.
Friday the 13th, Part 3 opens Friday the 13th at selected theaters and drive-ins.
Ooh, that was a lot to take in right now. So Shelly got into some beef with some bikers, then the bikers decided to retaliate and then go to Higgins Haven and burn down the barn. And Jason killed them all one by one. Shelly does give Jason his iconic hockey mask. We got Jason sporting a harpoon gun, and not to mention we have one of Jason's greatest, messiest kills, and yet he manages to clean it all up like if he was the custodian in that Nirvana video. Like, how did Jason manage to clean that up all very nicely? It seems like a Fabuloso commercial or something. Jason manages to kill off the hippie, but it also kills off his girlfriend Chili, and she seems very unimpressed. We do finally get the tale of Chris's past trauma, and it does sound like a Law & Order episode starring Jason Voorhees. Like I mentioned in the previous video, this franchise alone gave me absolutely no confidence that the Volkswagen Beetle would be the car to own in a horror movie.
Damn it, it's that battery. I charged it yesterday. Must not have taken.
You'd expect Big Strong Rick to have a big fight between him and Jason, but unfortunately we just learned that Rick is full of springs. And if we needed more proof that Jason was the one that threw the body through the window in Friday the 13th Part 1, well, here you go. I like this one a lot too because we actually see Jason getting really frustrated and annoyed. And I will say, even in death, Debbie is lending a helping hand. And since Jason is not a zombie, he definitely feels pain in the early films. Makes her way to the van, and thank God she has the keys, and the van doesn't work. Foreshadowing. I love this final confrontation in the barn because Jason has had absolutely enough of Chris and her nonsense. I mean, look at him. He's so frustrated. He looks like he lost his car keys or can't find his cell phone. If you were ever a kid in a playground and were underneath the jungle gym or the monkey bars, this happened all the time. It is pretty cool that Chris is resourceful and does really know her way around the barn, and she uses everything to her advantage to get rid of Jason. Whoa, Jason isn't dead, but then we get the final reveal here.
You one ugly motherfucker.
Yeah, but what a coincidence. Chris realizes this was her attacker from a couple of years ago. Ooh, Ali to the rescue! And he's gone. Never mind. Chris gives Jason the ultimate KO and the movie is now over. The movie has a very similar ending to the original Friday the 13th, where it's basically a big fake-out scene. Chris goes into the canoe, she thinks she sees something across the way, and what do you know, it's gone. But then something pulls her into the lake, but it looks like it's supposed to be Mrs. Voorhees. If this is an illusion, how in the hell would Chris know who Mrs. Voorhees was? Whatever, it still looks pretty cool, so it doesn't really bother me. But I remember many times as a little kid watching this movie, I was really confused on who that was in the lake. I thought maybe it was actually Ginny from Friday the 13th Part 2 pulling her into the lake. There is an alternate scene that wasn't used where Jason does behead Chris at the end of the movie, but then that was also a dream sequence if I remember correctly. The police finally show up and Chris is the only survivor and she is very hysterical. She looks very happy to be leaving the set and it looks like the crew are telling her right now, don't worry, you're not in Part 4. Friday the 13th Part 3 had a budget of $2.2 million and it grossed over $36 million, making it one of the highest grossing films in the franchise. I still love this movie very much. It is definitely one of my favorites in the franchise. I love it that it's very raw, it's very retro. We have some characters that are very likable. And I really do love how Jason looks in this movie, especially how he's portrayed. He's very big and strong, but he's also very clumsy too. And now that I think about it, I think Friday the 13th Part 3 might be the only film in the franchise where it doesn't rain and the name Jason is never mentioned once. If you love a good slasher home invasion movie, or if you're just a big fan of Friday the 13th films in general, I definitely suggest checking this one out if you've not seen it before. Alright, Friday the 13th Part 3. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Where does this movie rank in the franchise for you? Please comment below and let me know. And if you watched the entire video, thank you very much for watching my third entry in the Friday the 13th franchise review. And please don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And I'm Mike the Movie Misfit, and I will see you at the movies.
I like you. I like you a lot. I was thinking that maybe, we could...
I don't